What the hell is happening in property investing? I went and found a student turned property investor, John Raybould, who's appeared on Winners on Wednesday, to ask him whether university's a scam, is he really financially free, and will he have to never work a day in his life now that he has become a full-time property investor. One thing that really stood out was you've been set up so you never have to work a day in your life, and you are now financially free. That is kind of how people would look at you.
It's not as easy as some people would like to make out. It's, I would say, in some senses, and sometimes it is harder than a 9-to-5 job.
2 years down the line, what would you tell around sort of university age, student age, that are thinking that you've hit the jackpot, you've got the golden ticket, and you no longer have to work? What is the actual reality?
Go after things sensibly. Go after things. Go after these things in increments. Learn what you're doing, and don't just throw yourself into something, because that's where problems can occur.
This episode is sponsored by Quinergy, who are the experts in home boiler care and make landlord compliance easy. If you're a landlord, click the link in the description. So hi John, you are a full-time property investor, and you've started doing this when you were in your 20s and still a student.
Yes, yeah. So I was at Sheffield University studying history and politics, and I sort of learned a bit about property, and I thought I've got to get involved in this. I learned from property training courses and books, but I also learned a lot whilst I was actually doing it. Learning about specific areas to invest, what to do, what not to do. So it's a bit of a mixture really where I learned sort of the trade.
So I wanted to talk to you about HMOs, because I know that's part of your strategy, and you do a lot with HMOs.
You know, there's demand for different groups of people. So students require an individual room, working professionals moving to a new city, some people are unemployed. So there's obviously demand there, and I thought that if I set up HMO, I'm going to make a better return on invested capital within a specific property. So that's my initial attraction to them.
You come across, John, as quite an impressive person and switched on. So you would be almost like poster boy for anyone young or a student that wanted to get into property investing. Like, they would look at you and think, well, if John can do it, I can do it. And I've seen one of your videos, the Winners on Wednesday video, and I watched that. You're a 21-year-old lad, I think, when that was filmed.
So properties in Burnley, it's we're buying the property for 76,000, and we're looking at probably a return of about 1,400.
You said one of your friends called you like a property mogul, and you'd never have to work again a day in your life, and you were set up so you'd never have to work a day in your life. So what is the actual reality? So 2 years on from being all excited doing your first couple of deals, 2 years down the line, what would you tell a 21-year-old John or other people that are around sort of university age, student age, that are thinking that you've hit the jackpot, you've got the golden ticket, and you no longer have to work? What is the actual reality?
So the actual reality is property investing is a business. So you've got to be switched on. You've got to. It's not so much that obviously I can go and live in the Bahamas and sit on a beach for the rest of my life. Obviously, money is coming in through the rent and through property investing, but I'm basically like a manager for in the sense of sorting everything out. So obviously, with the HMOs, I pay the bills, so I've got to be on the ball with how much the bills are costing. I've got to be on the ball with obviously maintenance, that kind of thing. I've got to know what I'm doing. It's not as easy as some people would like to make out. It's, I would say, in some senses, and sometimes it is harder than a 9-to-5 job, because the actual book does stop with you. If there are any problems, you've got to, it is your responsibility to solve them.
And do you think more people need to be aware of that before signing up to these courses and thinking that they're going to be the magic ticket?
I think people, before obviously signing up to anything, they need to sort of consider their own kind of position and whether realistically they're going to be able to do this. So obviously money, time constraints, whether they're dealing with a job that's long hours. All these things obviously will take away from the amount of time they can obviously commit to a property and a property journey. So all these things need to be taken into account before signing up to a course. I would say to them, look, your best thing to do is invest this in a house if you want to get into property. I have said such things to people at sort of courses. I did help out on a few Samuel's courses. And I would never, if I knew somebody wasn't right, I would never bring them to the table and say, look, 12 grand academy, how do you want to pay? Would never do it.
Yeah, but that is what a lot of them are doing, though, isn't it?
Yeah. I know of certain. I mean, I do know of people. Yeah, but I mean, from personal experience, I've obviously got value from such courses. So
yeah. Do you think you got more value from them courses though because your dad was in a position to give you funds to invest? Do you think that's a key fundamental? Because I've noticed, especially in the last 18 months, so No Money Down seems to be the main sort of advert at the moment. And in my mind, that's targeting people without money to put down, but you had money to put down. So do you think that was sort of a key driver in your success, was having that amount of money at the beginning to invest?
Well, obviously, having money to start in any kind of business is a massive benefit and a massive help. Property investing can be done without funds, but it definitely is a lot harder and there is more risk involved. So I personally have done No Money Down deals, but to be honest with you, these deals went wrong. And obviously, No Money Down to start with, the figures looked great. It was a lease option agreement. Everything looked, red and rosy. In the end, the deal fell apart, and obviously it ended up costing me money because I was paying the landlord in rent.
I think it's difficult for a newbie investor to sort of understand that concept and have the right connections and also have experience in No Money Down. That's my own personal opinion. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I understand what you're saying. It will be harder starting out with no experience trying to get a No Money Down deal. I completely understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's interesting that your deal ended up costing you money, even though it's called No Money Down. It's actually cost you money, and you failed at that deal as well. I wanted to take you then through an example. So I watched a video of yours where you said you bought a property for 76,000, and the planned refurb was 3,000 to 4,000. It was going to make £1,400 per calendar month, and you were going to take home between £700 and £800 profit. So on paper, that's a massive return of investment of around 32%. Really eye-catching, really appealing to investors. But what was the actual reality then? So obviously you hadn't completed on that deal yet. So having completed on that deal and then having a year with that property or 2 years with that property, how much did the actual refurb cost you? And would you mind taking us through some of the numbers as a sort of working example?
Being completely honest and going through the deal, when I did that sort of interview, obviously it was secured at 76,000. I did get a survey done on the property before completion because I just decided I'll get a survey done. And they mentioned, I can't remember specifically what it was, but it was something to do with the roof. It might have been something to do with the felt on the roof. And so obviously I went back to the estate agents and renegotiated. So when I completed, I actually completed at selling price of 75,000. I think the end refurb was something like 15,000 because we ended up obviously with the electrics needing to be redone. That then meant that we had to do replastering and there's repainting involved. I think it was something like 15,000 or some in that sort of region of the money we had to put in.
That's interesting because on one of my videos, we had a problem that was found after we had a survey done and it was wrong with the roof and it cost us £5,000 to get fixed. And all the comments were like, you should have known this, blah, blah, blah. But they're looking at something with hindsight. The reality is you do everything that you can up front to mitigate those issues, but they can still occur. Which again goes back to my point where if you've not got a contingency pot, whenever I do property investments, I always like to keep a contingency of around about 10%, just in case something pops up that I wasn't expecting. If you're a new investor and especially if it's like a no money down deal and stuff, you might not have that money if anything like this pops up. So would you say that's essential to be aware that it will always cost more than you anticipate?
I would say it will always cost more, but you need, as you said, you need a contingency pot. I would say a contingency pot 10%. You've got to have it. So
it costs you £10,000 more for the refurb. You're expecting £1,400 per calendar month. How often do you actually get that £1,400 a month?
And the property took longer to refurb than we'd anticipated. It's been up and running since I think March 2019. Yeah. And since then, we've had really no big void periods, no serious problems. The property has stayed let. So cash flow wise, we've been doing well on that property.
What would you say is your realistic profit on that after you take out all the costs that you might be aware of that some potential new investors might not consider?
I was just going to say, you will get costs just generally through this.
What's the worst thing you've seen then, or worst thing that you've had to deal with in the last 2 years?
I mean, we've had a few burglaries and a few HMOs, but this was where I believe the tenant was involved in we was involved with drugs, and we obviously didn't know this. Otherwise, we would have obviously dealt with it much sooner. But I turned up at the property, and the police were already in the property. I was a bit sort of taken aback, like what's sort of going on. And basically, I believe some of the local drug dealers or someone within the area, so some people within the area, had come to the property, smashed in the front door, smashed in the window. They obviously wanted to get in, and they'd beaten him up inside. That was obviously quite a bad incident. I would say that was probably one of the worst incidents. I've had a couple of incidents like that I've had to deal with, maybe on an emotional level, because you don't obviously, no one wants to see someone else get hurt in that kind of sense, and obviously it's the cost is sort of secondary. So there was a cost to the windows, a cost to the door which got broken in.
Who covers that cost then? So would you cover that cost, or would it be your insurance policy covers that, or would you try and pursue the tenant for that? How did you deal with that?
With that incident, we covered the cost. We ended up refurbing once this tenant left, because the tenant did leave quite quickly after. We ended up refurbing this property. So with refurbing this property, we covered the cost for the door and stuff. One
thing that really stood out was you've been set up so you never have to work a day in your life, and you are now financially free. Is kind of how people would look at you. I've been to many of these sort of passive income, financial free, get rich quick, whatever you want to label them, those types of events. And many of the people on stage use that university is a scam, education is a scam, yet you're someone here that is in that world, and you're going to go to university to get qualifications for a career. You know, that's where your mind is now. So do you think that university is a scam? Just as a general, it's just a slight, I'm interested in your answer.
So I would never advise somebody to drop out of their degree to go and run towards, for instance, a property investment scheme or something like that. I'd always advise someone to finish your degree, finish your education, and then potentially move forward with property investment and that kind of thing, if that's what you want to go into.
Yeah, that's interesting that you're saying that. That's interesting you saying that, when I know a lot of people that try and say there's no point going to uni, come and sign up to our course and you'll learn more through this. So you're 100% would tell anyone. Your headline advice here would be to anybody that's a student studying for a degree: finish your degree, don't drop out to pursue. And it doesn't have to necessarily be property, it could be any of these passive income streams.
Definitely stay on, definitely finish your degree, have the qualification there. Because once you've got that qualification, you've got it for life.
It was interesting to see you on the Winners on Wednesday. And a lot of the people that watch my stuff also watch a lot of Samuel's stuff.
You watch
Make Winnet
videos and you're not subscribed
to Make Winnet.
Jeez, I'm going to find you and I'm going to punch you in the throat.
How did that come about? How did you become filmed and put on as a Winners from Wednesday? It's always interested me that.
So at this point, yes. So I was part of the academy, and obviously it was noticed that I was doing well, and so Samuel basically said about me going on a video with him and sort of describing my journey, describing sort of property investments I've done, as a benefit to others, really, to basically show that it can be done. There are not as many, it's not just literally old people who can invest in property, younger people can too, basically.
Yeah. Do you think your success was due to the training, or do you think it was due to the type of person that you are, your ability to understand and educate yourself? The fact that you've got a degree, I think in many ways shows a certain commitment in terms of time, effort, and also education or commitment to a cause, because you should almost show like a minimum level of intelligence there, which is, I can stick to something for 3 years. Do you think you were successful because of your abilities, or do you think it was due to the training?
If you've got to be the sort of person to take action. If you, the best training in the world is not going to get you anywhere if you're not willing to push yourself and actually do something with the knowledge you've gained.
Would you say that if you fail at these courses or at becoming financially free or, generating money through passive income, the buck stops with you? Do you think you are really the reason why it didn't work, or?
Sure, some courses aren't very good, and there are issues in some courses, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And in some instances, that might be the instance why people haven't done very well, because they've not been given good information, all these kind of things. I would definitely agree, though, that obviously most of it is personal effort and personal ability to be able to use the information gained from courses and from other sort of areas to be able to pull together and push forward.
I say, my personal opinion, a lot of people fail at any of this stuff because if they're leaving the 9 to 5 and then they're going to pursue this financial freedom sort of dream that they've got, they don't realize that, number one, you're learning a new topic or subject. So you're learning property investing, but equally, and this is what's overlooked a lot of the time in my mind, you're now becoming self-employed, or you don't realize you're actually running a business. So there's almost like two learning curves running simultaneously. One, you're learning about property, and two, you've now got to talk about profit and loss, tax, accountants, and then you've also got dealing with the council if you're dealing with HMOs and regulations and stuff like that. It's almost like too many learning curves going on at once for a lot of people. So I think almost tackling them individually, you will be more successful.
I sort of get the crux of what you're saying. I wouldn't say to somebody that it's a good idea to, let's say one day they're working in a shop and then they just decide to, right, I'm going to be a property investor, and they drop everything, they leave the job, and they throw themselves into a specific strategy or something. I wouldn't advise that. I would always advise that if you've decided you're going to go down a path of whatever, you need to educate yourself, but you don't drop everything you've got. So for instance, if you've got a job, keep the job. Learn about, for instance, property or all this stuff, but make sure you've still got your job for stability to be able to continue your life. If you're at university and you've got a couple of years left or a year left, don't just drop out of university. Go after things sensibly. Go after these things in increments. Learn what you're doing, and don't just throw yourself into something, because that's where problems can occur.
And that's the one thing I'll end on then, is the passive income. So how many hours a week do you work to be financially free and passive, making your passive income roughly? Is it a full-time job? So
at certain times, I'm doing a refurb, it can be a full-time job. Because at the end of the day, as I said, it rests with me. Is me and my father's business. It rests with us. We've got to, if there's any problems, we've got to sort them, and we're responsible for that.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Ron. Cheers. Thanks very much, mate.
No worries. Cheers.